I didn't expect to be here today.
I didn't expect you to be here today.
I didn't expect to drive my car here today. I didn't expect to put my robe on today. I didn't expect to deliver a sermon in here today. And I bet that Rabbi Amy didn't expect to share the bima today either. It's funny how our expectations evolve into assumptions, how a projection of what we think will happen hardens into what we assume must happen. When we're comfortable in our communities, comfortable in our roles, in our relationships, we don't think twice about expectations. They feel fixed. And then things shift. They change. Honestly, I spent so long this year looking backwards, rethinking and constantly analyzing each action that I didn't notice how quickly the future was turning into the present. It took me by surprise. And luckily, our tradition was not so surprised by this. And so when we were discussing the idea of how to present and to teach and to be with all of you on Kol Nidre, Rabbi Amy turned to the words of our tradition and to wordplay inside of the grammar. And she presented this idea that we're going to share with you. The word for year, shana, shares the same root as the word shinui, change. Built into the very idea of the year is the expectation of transformation. A year is not meant to simply repeat. If it did, it wouldn't be true Shana. The rhythm of Jewish time insists that each cycle carries with it a difference. We don't return to Rosh Hashanah to replicate last year's prayers. We return to discover what they mean to us now, with everything that has changed in our world. Even the word shoneh, different, shares the same root again. A year is a year precisely because it is different from the last one. In other words, sameness is not a measure of time. Difference is a measure of time. The calendar does not promise us continuity, it promises us change. Our lives then are not accidents of stability occasionally interrupted by disruption, they're journeys of continual becoming. The tragedies and the blessings that reshape us are not outside the rhythm of life. They are woven into the very experience of time in our tradition. Change is at the very core of the Jewish year. The rabbis did not imagine change as smooth, progressive evolution, as though tomorrow could be projected from today. They understood change can be unprojected, disruptive, even shattering in our lives. They lived through wars, they lived through exiles, political upheavals. They never would have planned for any of the things that end up shaping the tradition. What mattered was not the illusion of predicting change, but the discipline of how they respond to change. That is why they built into our tradition the awareness that time bends. They encoded flexibility into the calendar, into halakha, into our Jewish law, into the very rhythm of prayer and ritual. The rabbis were not naive about continuity. They assumed that upheaval would be inevitable. They taught us to be awake to it, to acknowledge it, to respond to it. And that is not about the change that we choose or change that we seek. It's not only the inner working of tshuva, that's important too, but this is about global change, historical change, unpredictable change, the kind that unsettles us, but also the kind that defines us. Our tradition does not hide from that part. It puts it right in the words we use to mark time.
As we continued the conversation about our people's language about time, that shana is the root of shinui and shoneh. That the same is true of chodesh. When we talk about the month, the Hebrew month, we talk about chodesh, what is from the root. Chodesh is from the root chadash, which means new. So chadash, we don't have a set of understanding. We don't have a way of understanding a chodesh that doesn't mean something new. And when does it start? When does the Jewish month start? It starts at the new moon. Cultures could pick the full moon, the bright moon, the amazing moon, to say this is the first day of a new month, if you're following a lunar calendar. But that's not what the Israelites did. It's not what we Jews do. We start the counting of a new month, a chodesh, with the moon that is chadash. And if the moon is chadash, it is the darkest phase of the moon. It seems a little counterintuitive to start a month in the dark. But if chodesh is about what is chadash, what is new, we don't get to pick what's new. And everything that is new starts in darkness. Rabbi Sher mentioned that at Rosh Hashanah. Creation starts in watery darkness. We start in watery darkness. A seed starts its little roots growing in moist darkness. Zenju Ursula Manuel, in her book Opening to Darkness, says, in darkness we become devoted to clarity, courage, peace, and harmony. We discover the basic goodness of all humanity when we experience darkness together. Life itself is a dark experience, a magical experience. When we bless that moon in the sky at its most dark, we are making a statement about our trust, and we affirm actively that we believe there's going to be a waxing of that new moon, and there's going to be all kinds of possibilities that come into beginning. There's going to be all kinds of new things, new approaches, new opportunities. That is an act of trust, and I believe an act of volition and will to say that's how we choose to greet the dark of the moon. We start now. We begin in the dark, and we bless the moon. We take an active, we know the moon's going to do what the moon's going to do, but we actively take part in blessing the opportunities that come with a chodesh. Everything in that chodesh that we can't know that is going to be chadash. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm not loving the new way of life that the universe brought us this past year. New doesn't always mean good, and it doesn't mean easy. What mattered to our tradition is that people, the Jewish people, would live into a sense of trust that whatever is chadash, if we bless together, the fact that we know it's going to change from that too, that is how we live as a people connected to holiness and eternity.
And here's the radical truth. Change is at the core of the structure of all of the Jewish calendar. Our ancestors do not expect anything to run on track. They expected disruption from the beginning. They built change into the calendar. That's why Purim was added after Esther's story, Hanukkah after the Maccabees. Time bent to hold the collective memory and resilience of our people. The Jewish year itself expanded, literally expanded to hold the history that was demanded of it. Our tradition's calendar is almost like a form of pastoral care for us. When we are going through struggle and tragedy, the calendar reflects back and says, we will honor this. We will remember your pain, your experience. We will grow as a tradition. What a precious gift. What a source of strength it's offering us while we are still enduring the pain. The Jewish calendar says, by looking at our wounds, your struggle will not be ignored. Your story will be remembered. And even in the midst of that hardship, that can become inspiration. And in true Jewish fashion, it also becomes a reason for gathering, a reason for joy, and yes, a reason to eat. You know that one. They tried to kill us. We survived. Let's eat. I know, bad timing, but sorry. Even more radical is the willingness of the rabbis not only to add the holiday after the Torah-ordained festivals that we already know, but to imbue them with holiness. On Purim and Hanukkah, we still say, Asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, the same blessing we recite in Torah commandments. In doing so, the rabbis hold incredible chutzpah that holiness is not locked in the past, but can emerge in the present. They apply a sanctified nature to time. They declare that their own moment in time, their own crisis, their own redemption story deserve the same blessing as Sinai. In our own generation, the great experiment of the state of Israel has stretched the calendar again in that way. Out of the Holocaust comes Yom HaShoah. Out of the sacrifice of soldiers and victims of terror comes Yom HaZikaron. The dream of renewal comes Yom HaAtzmaut. Don't worry. There's no test for all those holidays. That's a lot I throw at once. But just know, we can still craft holiness. Nowhere is the flexibility of the Jewish time more visible than that ability to pivot, that ability to embrace, that ability to know that when we believe it to be so, we can create the space to gift this world more sacred time. The Jewish calendar itself testifies that time will never be static. It bends, it transforms, it teaches us that change is sacred.
Change. Facing what's new. We understand this as a people 3,000 years old. It's that far back in our language and the very terminology we use for time. But the changing cycles of the moon, as from our perspective, the moon doesn't change. We just see it as changing because we're moving. In blessing the moon each month, the rabbis give us the language of Or Chadash Ma'or Kadmon, a new light from an ancient source. Because that moon stays the same all the time for however long it's been there. An ancient source, but new light, a new month, a new opportunity from our perspective, because for us, it's starting to wax again. It's going to become light again. Or Chadash Ma'or Kadmon. We are connected deeply to what is ancient. That's why we're here. That's the power of being here. That's why each of you risked the parking situation to come here. Because standing together in what is ancient, connected to that, we can face anything that's new that comes at us. We're already 8 months into doing that. But it also appears, this idea, in our high holiday liturgy that we sing over and over, Hashivenu v'nashuva, help us to return. That's the only way we're able to return, is to get some help, to open ourselves to those things that move beyond what we're able to see and touch and feel, but we know, to let them work through us, to help us get to the place of wanting truly to come back, to return. And that's Hashivenu, that first part, you know that. But the second part is Chadesh Yamenu Kekedem. Make our days Chadash like Kedem, like ancient times. That makes no sense. Unless you're a Jew. Let us, like every generation, like every people, everyone in this world has to face what's coming now. And we do that with the wisdom of the past. We stand with what is old, what is tested, what is timeless. Kekedem. And may we be renewed in our intention of coming together through the ancient roots and practices and liturgy of our tradition, as well as hearts ready to be open to the changes that have come to us, the changes coming in this new year, and the new things that we don't necessarily choose. Hashivenu v'nashuva, chadesh yamenu kekedem.